Welcome to Quicksand, the most important news in pharma and biotech this week. After a delay of more than 2 years, Teva has won approval of its generic version of Mylan's highly successful EpiPens. The approval comes at an opportune time given that manufacturing issues have made supplies of Mylan's epinephrine injectors spotty, leaving some parents of children with life-threatening allergies frantic. The FDA said it had approved Teva's copies of the EpiPen and EpiPen Jr. epinephrine autoinjectors in 2 doses, 0.3 milligrams and 0.15 milligram strengths. They are approved for emergency treatment of allergic reactions, including life-threatening anaphylaxis in adults and children who weigh more than 33 pounds. The FDA considered the Teva copy in 2016, but rejected it because of certain major deficiencies, which Teva at the time said would mean a significant delay. While Mylan's branded EpiPen once had the market pretty much to itself, other epinephrine autoinjectors are now in the market, including a generic EpiPen from Mylan, which it introduced at the time amidst criticism over its near monopoly position and the high prices of its EpiPens. Impax Laboratories, now part of Amneal Pharmaceuticals, and Kaleo have also approved products. The approval of Teva's products comes as parents of children who need the pens in the event of a severe allergic reaction have been scrambling to find replacements in some markets. Spot shortages of Mylan's EpiPens developed last year when a Pfizer subsidiary that makes them for Mylan had manufacturing delays. The FDA this May added it and the injectors from Impax Laboratories to its drug shortages list. The FDA and National Institutes of Health are proposing to further limit the role of the NIH and its Recombinant DNA Advisory Committee, or RAC, in the review of human gene therapies. The changes, announced in the Federal Register, are aimed at reducing overlaps in the two agencies' oversight of gene therapies, which results in duplicative work for sponsors as the field progresses following the approval of the first 3 gene therapies last year. In an accompanied perspective by FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb and NIH Director Francis Collins in the New England Journal of Medicine, the 2 agency heads write that there is no longer a compelling need to subject gene therapies to additional oversight compared to other types of biomedical products. Currently, sponsors of clinical trials involving gene therapies are required to submit initial protocols, annual reports, amendments, and serious adverse event reports to both agencies. Historically, the RAC also played a role in reviewing gene therapy protocols and safety data arising from such studies, though in 2016, NIH limited the committee's role to protocols that raised exceptional issues or concerns, based on a recommendation from the Institute of Medicine. According to NIH, the RAC has only reviewed 3 of the 275 gene therapy protocols submitted since that change took effect. However, under the FDA and NIH's proposal, the RAC's role in reviewing gene therapy protocols would be entirely eliminated, and sponsors would no longer be required to submit reports to NIH on such protocols. Going forward, NIH says the RAC will continue to function as an advisory board to NIH on emerging fields such as gene editing, synthetic biology, and neurotechnology. Thanks to the law reauthorizing the user fee program known as the FDA Reauthorization Act, FDA's Oncology Center for Excellence Pediatric Oncology program recently drafted a list of molecular targets to provide better guidance to industry in planning for initial pediatric study plan submissions. The efforts from FDA, with input from the National Cancer Institute, are meant to increase the number of written requests for pediatric studies of new drugs developed for adult cancers earlier in the development timeline. This list includes molecular targets for which existing evidence and/or biologic rationale exist to determine their potential relevance to the growth or progression of one or more pediatric cancers, and those targets for which there is evidence that they are not associated with the growth or progression of pediatric tumors, for which requirements for early pediatric evaluation of drugs and biologics which are directed at these targets would be waived, FDA said. The agency said that the list fulfills the statutory requirements imposed by the Act and is expected to provide some guidance to industry in planning for initial pediatric study plan submissions for new drugs and/or biologic products in development for cancer. Thanks to the 21st Century Cures Act, by the end of 2018, the FDA has to create a framework to evaluate the use of real-world evidence to support the approval of new indications for approved drugs or to satisfy post-approval study requirements. FDA defines real-world evidence as the clinical evidence regarding the usage and potential benefits or risks of a medical product derived from analysis of real-world data. Currently, FDA routinely uses real-world data to provide evidence about drug safety, drawing on claims in pharmacy data from more than 100 million people in its Sentinel system. But FDA is now focused on identifying additional areas in which real-world data may be used to generate evidence of effectiveness. To explore how randomized trials can be conducted in real-world settings, the FDA is supporting the first randomized clinical trial in Sentinel, which to date has only been used to assess safety. The IMPACT AFib trial will test an educational intervention to address important public health problems of underuse of effective medications to reduce the risk of stroke in patients with atrial fibrillation, and it could serve as a proof of concept for future real-world evidence trials, the authors write. FDA also is funding a study to explore whether observational methods can be used to replicate the results of approximately 30 clinical trials designed to provide evidence about the effectiveness of a drug. This project will assist the FDA in understanding how observational methods can be applied to address questions involving drug effectiveness, they add. Health Canada recently released for consultation a plan to establish a mechanism that allows for the review clock on pre-market submissions to be formally paused. A pause-the-clock policy will be implemented in parallel with the new user fees for drugs and medical devices by April 2019, Health Canada said. The consultation, which is part of the user fee proposal, seeks to pause the review clock during a review only when pre-specified conditions or triggers are met. The consultation seeks feedback on what those triggers should be. Within the proposed model, it is anticipated that clock pauses would be triggered only under defined circumstances, therefore would not routinely add to the total time to decision, Health Canada said. In some circumstances, a pause could avoid the submission receiving a negative decision. On the pharmaceutical side, Health Canada proposes a pause when there is Health Canada approval of a sponsor's request for an extension to a clarification or minor information request beyond the number of days that they have to respond in accordance with applicable guidance documents. Another trigger that could apply under this mechanism would be when Health Canada determines the need to use an expert advisory panel or committee. Thank you for listening to Quicksand, episode 43, August 20th, 2018.